got married right after graduation, we were happy for them. But we were also worried they were so young, and Tom had just started his career. We offered to let them live with us until they got on their feet, but they declined. They wanted to make it on their own. At first, Tom called regularly. He'd tell us about his new job, their apartment, and their life together. But as time went on, the calls became less frequent. Weeks turned into months, and before we knew it, a whole year had passed without hearing from him. We tried calling, but he never picked up. We sent letters, but they went unanswered. It was like he had disappeared from our lives completely. Elizabeth and I were heartbroken. We couldn't understand why our son had cut us off. We wondered if we had done something wrong, if we had been bad parents. Somehow the house felt emptier than ever. We missed the sound of Tom's laughter, the way he'd bound down the stairs in the morning, even the mess he'd leave in the kitchen after making a midnight snack. As the years went by, we learned to live with the silence. We focused on each other, on our hobbies, and on our friends. We traveled a bit, saw some of the places we'd always dreamed of visiting, but there was always a Tom-shaped hole in our hearts. Every Christmas, every birthday, every milestone, we'd think of him and wonder how he was doing. When Elizabeth got sick, I hoped Tom would somehow find out and come home. I imagined him rushing through the door full of apologies and worry, but he never came. I took care of Elizabeth myself, with help from our neighbors and friends. It was hard watching the vibrant woman I loved fade away, but we faced it together, just like we had faced everything else in our lives. After Elizabeth passed, I was lost. The house felt empty without her in it. I wandered from room to room, touching her things, remembering our life together. Planning her funeral was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I wanted it to be perfect, a fitting tribute to the amazing woman she was. The day of the funeral arrived. I stood at the front of the church greeting people as they came in, and then I saw him, Tom. He was older, of course, with touches of gray at his temples. Beside him was a woman I assumed was Anna, and two children, a boy and a girl. I froze, not knowing what to do or say. Tom approached me hesitantly. He looked nervous, his eyes red-rimmed, like he'd been crying. We stared at each other for a moment, and then he hugged me. It was awkward at first, but then I felt myself relax into it. It felt like coming home. We didn't have time to talk much before the service started. Tom and his family sat in the front row with me. Throughout the service, I could hear him sniffling beside me. When it was time for people to share memories of Elizabeth, Tom stood up, his voice shaking. He talked about how patient and kind Elizabeth had been, how she always made his favorite cookies when he was sad, how she taught him to ride a bike and bandaged his scraped knees. By the end, we were all in tears. After the funeral, as people were leaving, Tom asked if we could talk. We went to a quiet corner of the church. He broke down, then apologizing over and over for not being there, for cutting us off, for missing out on so much time. He said he had been young and stupid, caught up in proving he could make it on his own. He said Anna had encouraged him to reach out many times, but he had been too ashamed. I listened to him, my heart breaking all over again. But I also felt a weight lifting. My son was back. He hadn't forgotten us, hadn't stopped loving us. He had just lost his way for a while. I forgave him. How could I not? He was my son, and I loved him. We hugged again, and this time it felt right, natural, like no time had passed at all. Tom introduced me properly to Anna and the kids, my grandchildren. I couldn't believe it. The boy Michael was 8, and the girl Emily was 6. They were beautiful, and they called me Grandpa right away. It was surreal. We all went back to the house after the funeral as the kids explored the big old place, running up and down the stairs and exclaiming over everything. Tom and I sat in the living room. We talked for hours, catching up on all the lost years. He told me about his job, his life, his struggles and triumphs. I told him about Elizabeth's illness, about our travels, about how we'd missed him as the evening wore on. I finally asked Tom what his plans were. He hesitated, then told me he had a good job in another state where he and his family had settled. They had a nice house. The kids were in good schools, and Anna had a career she loved. I could see the conflict in his eyes. He was worried about me, about leaving me alone in this big house. But I knew what I had to do. I told him it was okay, that he should go back to his life. I said I was just happy to have him back in my life and that we could visit each other. Tom protested. At first, he suggested I sell the house and move closer to them, but I couldn't do that. This house was full of memories of Elizabeth, of our life together. It was my home. In the end, Tom agreed to go back. We made plans for regular visits and phone calls. As they were leaving, Tom hugged me tightly and whispered, "Thank you, Dad. I love you." After they left, I sat in Elizabeth's favorite chair and cried. I cried for all the lost years, for Elizabeth, who didn't get to see this reconciliation, for the grandchildren we never knew we had. But I also cried from happiness. My family was whole again now. A week later, I'm wondering if I did the right thing. Should I have Ask Tom to move back. Am I being selfish by staying in this house? But then I think of Tom's life, his career, his children's schools. I think of the life he's built for himself, and I know I made the right choice. Update. It's been 3 months since my last post, and a lot has changed. First, I want to thank everyone for their kind words and support. Your responses help me feel more confident in my decision not to ask Tom to move back home after the funeral. Tom kept his promise to stay in touch. He called me every week, sometimes more often. We talked about everything: his work, the kids, my daily life. It felt good to reconnect with my son after so many years apart. About a month after the funeral, Tom surprised me by showing up for a weekend visit with his family. I was overjoyed to see them. We spent the weekend looking through old photo albums, telling stories about Elizabeth, and playing with the grandkids in the backyard. It felt like we were making up for lost time. To my surprise, these visits became a regular occurrence. Every other weekend, Tom and his family would drive down to spend time with me. Sometimes they'd stay overnight, other times just for the day. Each visit filled the house with laughter and life again. I started to look forward to these weekends, planning activities and cooking big meals for everyone. Tom seemed genuinely interested in my life. He asked about my friends, my hobbies, and how I was coping with Elizabeth's loss. He even helped me with some home repairs I've been putting off. I felt touched by